Welcome to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Para Cave.
And yes, hello, welcome back to another episode of the Para Cave podcast. Troy Warner here, and this is part number 2 of the interview I did with Alan Shortall, former NRL referee, now the general manager of elite refereeing at Football Australia. I hope you have enjoyed listening to episode number 1, or part 1 I should say, of the interview with Alan. I really found it to be a interesting chat, certainly getting a different feel of listening to someone being a referee. I haven't interviewed too many referees on the podcast before. Bill Harrigan and Gavin Badger come to mind. I think they may have only been the only 2 that I have interviewed, but it's always good to hear something from a referee, because we hear from players all the time and fans, so good to hear from a referee. But I hope you enjoyed part number 1. This is part number 2. Enjoy.
Communication piece was I'm coming in, I need to report something. So yeah. It's probably more just a procedural thing that's changed the way we do things.
Yeah, no, it certainly was probably used too much in the 80s, I guess, and probably the early 90s, mid-90s, I guess, but I think Phil Gould did it one day. I
remember when Phil did it, yeah. I think I saw it on TV, I don't think I was. But I remember Phil being, and that was one of the things I'd love to be able to do while I'm in whatever position I hold, is try and humanise referees a bit more, because I think no one challenges us on decisions. Like they're not going hard at us when they see us in real life. They don't go hard at us at decisions. They actually ask questions like you're asking. Like this is why I wanted to jump on and talk to you, is at least if you humanise what we do, like you may not agree with us every single time, but at least you'll understand that we go through a whole heap of work, and on both sides of the fence, having seen what the people I work with do now and what they go through, and the one of the bigger differences, and I'll go back to your question earlier, football referees have to do massive amounts of travel. Like some of our guys were traveling to AFC recently, and they had to travel to remember one of our refs, Sean Evans, had to travel to Jordan to do an Asian Cup game, and they want to do it because that's their state of origin, right? That's their next level, is FIFA World Cups,
internationals,
international football, which is it's probably not as up there as what rugby league has at the moment, but that's their state of origin for those officials. So for those guys and girls, they have to travel, then they've got to come back and referee domestically as well too. So that's hard work. That's a massive impact on not only themselves physically and mentally, but if they've got families, then they've got to come back and referee in the domestic competition and perform. So it's challenging. It's for both sides of the fence. So they work hard at what they do to try and achieve what they would like to do, but also, we always walk out there trying to do the best for the games that they're involved in as well too.
Well, let's go there. How did you handle criticism of your refereeing? Like if you perhaps made a bad decision or something, and someone in the media or fans criticised your refereeing, how did you handle that? Because as you said, referees are humans as well. Humans make mistakes. So how did you handle that?
With difficulty, it's not easy to work through that. I think there are a number of different elements. One is you've got to have a really great support network. So family, friends, a lot of your mates are referees. Like you work together. Yeah. As I say, I've got mates that I've grown up with. Like I'll go back, Ash Klein and Gav Reynolds I started with, so and to I only finished at the NRL a couple of months ago, but I was still working with those 2 guys. So you've got to have great support networks, and sometimes you can't bounce ideas off them, so you've got to have people outside of the game that help you, and that's probably important because they bring you down to size. Yeah. What we need to be. The reality is that you can't control things, and I've done things in the past where talk about and teach control the controllables. That like you probably everyone's, but and that can be hard to work through. But you can't control what the media are going to say. They're going to write their stories as long as you stand by your own values and belief systems and know that what you're doing is right. You know you're going to make mistakes, so it's just how you manage that process as well too. And that's where good support networks, talking to different people, having an understanding that you'll be able to work through it. That sometimes you're going to get dropped. That's the other part is knowing that you've got to deal with that part of it and go back, and maybe you have to start again, or maybe you've got to cop that for a period of time and work hard to get back to where you're at. So that's often a good reset, so you can actually start to perform better again. Because sometimes decision making comes off the back of, I've had good, and then all of a sudden there's been bits within those games you probably haven't quite identified, and then that big thing comes and you've got to sort of work through that. You've got the action type scenario. So challenging, yes, but there's having people around you and those good connections are probably the biggest thing for me.
Was there ever a decision that you made in a game that you did have that big criticism towards yourself?
Not really. Like I can remember I remember a call back in 2011. Billy backed me, and I remember it was on the back of the Telegraph and that sort of stuff. I think it was at Leichhardt. I did an award a try. That ended up it was a try and that sort of stuff. So, and it ended up not being game critical and stuff like that. Okay. So probably there's probably other ones that would stand out, but that's the one that comes to mind. But look, the good thing about the two referee systems, one of the positives was that you could bring people in without being criticised and having scars around those type of things. So for me, that was probably something I didn't bring up earlier, was that value of bringing a fresh referee in and not having to be the face of officiating.
Yep.
Which was valuable. So then that was two refs at the time as well too. So you probably didn't have as much criticism as the guys that I got mentored by. They had to take the hits and stuff like that for a period of time. So
don't worry, Billy's still getting criticised 36 years later after the Balmain Canberra Grand Final. So
yes, I have heard that criticism
constantly. But what advice would you give for a young man or woman these days that is thinking about becoming a referee, but maybe turned off because of that criticism or scrutiny that they come under from fans and media?
I would say, one, give it a go, because that criticism's fleeting, right? So no one's going to remember many of the decisions that I've made that I've got wrong, right? And they probably don't remember they definitely don't remember the ones I've got right either. But one of the things I loved about what I did was, you get the best seat in the house, right? So like you said, I was a step away from State of Origin, so I got to sit in that 2017 series. I was on a prelim final where the game was just so tough and challenging. Now I've talked about all those games that I've talked about. One of the things I in preparation for refereeing, you probably sacrifice a little bit. You don't go out to parties as much. You don't do that sort of stuff. But the benefit of that was, I got to go to the UK and do a Four Nations tournament. Shane Hayne and I went together. You travel to places you probably never thought about.
Yep.
And you got to travel around the country and be part of different things and speak to different people and be part of that type of process. So, if people were saying, "Shorty, why would I get involved in refereeing?" It's because if you think you're great at decision making under pressure, you love sport, you love testing yourself at the elite level, and playing wasn't your option, and getting into this was that. And I reckon that's a space we can get into is getting into players who probably aren't quite going to make that first grade level. They're great opportunities. I worked with Henry Perinara for a long period of time, and he was probably our most successful cadet at the time. He was in that program. So he was really good. He was a very good referee. I enjoyed working with him as well too. So not that the the Ash Quines and the Casey Badgers and those type of referees shouldn't be doing it, but there's pathways on both sides that they're all successful, and the guys and girls like myself, like I've just named, are successful officials in their own right as well too.
Yeah, definitely, and for sure. I mean, Henry copped his fair share of criticism as well. Probably a lot from Parramatta fans, to be honest, as well, which is a bit unfair, but not myself.
He's a former player, wasn't he, Troy?
That's right, and that must be difficult to be a former player in the NRL and then go on to the refereeing ranks, because there's always that little perception in fans' heads that, this is a team that he played for, so whether he left that team in a good space or not, it might have a little bit of bias against that team. But
that's the humanising piece, Troy. I reckon that's one where I'd love to keep talking to people about that, because I know every time someone steps across a white line, it's literally two teams. You actually forget about who they actually are, and you're literally there trying to make the best decision for that game at that particular time. So that's challenging to try and get that story out there. So yeah, maybe as we go forward, that's maybe an opportunity we can keep talking about.
Yeah, no, definitely, for sure. Happy to talk about that anytime. We'll go to some common league questions that I ask rugby league players, ex-players, but you mentioned a few games that you have refereed during your career. Is there one that just really, really stands out that you just thought, oh, geez, I loved that game. That was a cracker of a game.
Probably the one we spoke about earlier. I don't have a different one for you.
Okay, yeah, no, that's okay.
The South Roosters game was probably the one, and probably because of the commentary, I sit back and watch it. Like over Christmas, it was on. You sit back over Christmas and you watch that they're on the TV there. So, and probably Warren Smith's commentary. I have mentioned that to him on X and said it was great for him. The way he commentated that particular game was really good. So like it's just the one that stands out from the others around, just the finish to it, the excitement, the part, like you walk off the field going, how good was that? That's why you do it. That's why you're part of it, and why you work so hard to try and achieve what you've achieved.
Now, for players, sometimes they hate playing at a ground for whatever reason, but is it different for referees? Is there a ground that you just didn't want to referee at for whatever reason? Might have copped a bit of abuse from the fans over the fence or whatever?
It's normally one where there's a poor performance, right? It's normally one. Wollongong for me, Wynn Stadium, used to be a bogey ground, and only because I didn't think I was ever going to get to first grade after an SG ball game one year, going way back to 2000, maybe even 1999. I can't remember. It's going way back. And then Campbelltown, it's just is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But in saying that, like I was watching the Tigers game the other day. My son loves the Tigers.
Okay.
He's the Tigers man, and he was watching, and there was a buzz like the other night. That was last night, wasn't it?
Yeah. Warriors and Tigers.
And it was just great to see that. So I denigrating grounds. I don't like doing that, but they're the ones where you just go. Sometimes where you've had not so great performance, you go. Sometimes I just don't want to. They're the two that stood out for me around those type of things.
What about a ground that you loved to referee at? Would that have been because there was a massive crowd, a big atmosphere, or you just had a really good game that game?
Leichhardt was always, I did reserve grade games. But I also did first grade games there where it was just a great atmosphere. You're always up for it. Everything, things happened, all that sort of stuff. It was just a really good place to be at. And as I said to you at the start, like Parramatta Stadium was home for me. It was I did grand finals when I was a kid there, all that sort of stuff. I've done plenty of games there, so like they're probably the two that stand out for me around the ones that I really enjoyed going to for various reasons.
Was there a favourite try that you awarded that you can remember throughout your career?
Oh, now you're challenging me. I've got
Well, yeah, that being a sort of a fan that way, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. And now I'm trying to fly, I'm trying to push it out to try and remember. Troy, to be pretty honest, no, there isn't one that sort of really stands out because they all sort of blur into each other. So, without on notice, I'll have to come back to you
Yeah,
and tell you about a try that would be of value. But there's probably a heap that I could remember if I had some time to think about.
yeah, no, that's fair enough. Is there a player that you probably wanted to get to referee and you didn't get to referee, or it just doesn't matter? It's just like whoever's there is there.
No, probably the way I'm going to answer that question is that there was always players you loved refereeing, right? And as I said, that was like the JT example. He was the one that was going to test you out. And I remember you mentioning Cameron Smith, right? I loved Cameron Smith having Cameron Smith to referee because he was the peak of his game. No matter what you knew you were going to be challenged by him, so it required you to prepare, required you to do everything you possibly could to make sure that you were at the top of your game. And there was plenty of players like that. Mick Ennis is another example of guys who just knew how to challenge you, so you needed to prepare as best as you possibly can. And they're players who are successful at what they did, and you knew you knew how to try and make sure that we got the best possible game environment so that everybody could play to the best possible scenario.
It probably would have made your job a little bit easier too, with them being an extra referee on the field as well, just helping with the decisions. But
Not at all, Troy. No, they were challenging, and this is the other thing about the humanising piece is that you prepare for players, you prepare for scenarios, you try and make sure that you know what you've got in place, ready to try and prepare yourself to be the best you possibly can be. So there's a whole heap of work that goes into getting yourself ready for a game each and every week.
well, talking about preparation, what would be like a typical week for a referee uh, going into a game, like a quick sort of snapshot in preparation?
Yeah, so look, both sides of the fence, they'll do physical training. Probably sort of middle of the week, they have a big session where the group gets together. They'll do some off legs training. They'll do some vision work, a lot of video work to understand what some of the trends within the game, where they need to be at for the following weekend. They'll then do their game. Then once the game's finished, they'll go into a process of review. So they'll watch the game, get together with a coach at the end of it, talk through decisions, whether they're right or wrong, what their movement patterns were like, whether they could be better or whether that was successful, and then back into a group session once again. So there's a whole heap of work that happens within a season, but then very similarly to the players, there's pre-season programs that, again, both sides of the fence, where officials are physically preparing themselves to be at their best as they possibly can. As much as the really small, minute pieces around laws of the game, interpretations and guidelines, all those type of pieces, they're working really hard to make sure that when they're under pressure, they're actually knowing that this is the right decision for the right time in the game around that. So there's a whole process around trying to prepare yourself to be ready where you can be.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I suppose sort of a flip side of that, who would be like the prankster during your time, like in training sort of thing? And because obviously you've got to have the serious side, but you've also got to have the fun side as well.
Yeah. You might remember Steve Lyons, so we called him Teddy.
Oh, yes.
He was the character of our group. Closely followed by Jason Robinson, but Teddy Lyons was the character. When the room was silent, then he knew when to take the opportunity to have a bit of fun, right? But again, I worked with Teddy a lot in the early part of my career, and again, he was different to some of the other referees.
Okay.
But he was very good. I liked refereeing with him as well too. Probably because he was unique in his own way. He had different ways of doing things compared to guys like Tony Archer and Matt Chechen and Shane Hayne, who I did a lot of games with as well too. So all four of them were different, and all four of them were successful at what they did. But Teddy was the prankster. He was the guy who'd always like to have a joke.
Oh, well, you need one of those at the clubs, in your team at the clubs, and probably any workplace really. I mean, you need, as long as it's legit and not over the top. You need the pranksters to have a laugh. But if you didn't go down the rugby league path, refereeing, what do you think you would have? What career path do you think you would have taken up?
Like most referees, I think I was definitely going to be a PE teacher. Like my initial thing was a physio. I wasn't. I want to say I wasn't smart enough. My TER wasn't enough. Like at the time, it was like 96, and I knew I was never going to be. I was too busy playing sport or doing stuff to do that. So I then sort of went to PE teaching, and funnily enough, I didn't finish my degree.
Okay.
I actually pulled out of the degree for a period of time because I wanted to focus on my refereeing. I was sort of starting to go up. I did go back and do it before I sort of got graded and finished that off. And then about 3 years, once I was sort of in that process, I finally got to full-time refereeing. And then I'd finished my degree, and then they said, "Here you go, Shorty, have a contract." I'm like, "Oh, damn it." So I didn't really teach a heap.
Okay.
But that's where I would have been, I think, if it wasn't refereeing, I would have been PE teaching. Yeah.
Nice. Do you have any regrets from your refereeing days and decisions that you probably, or would you do it all again the same way?
Oh, no way. I'd do it all again. It's been such an exciting and evolutionary. And as I've said to a few people since my sort of movement from one side to the other, I don't think I would be who I am today without rugby league and without refereeing. It's sort of you've been in it for so long, but what it has allowed me to do is now be part of this new opportunity. So I would do it all again. I've met some awesome people. I'm sure the players say the same thing. Like I said, I've got lifelong friends, Ash and Funk to it at a certain extent. Watched, coach people like Casey Badger. She was from Parramatta, so I watched her grow and jump into what she's been doing. And I've coached a whole heap of those officials as well too, and they often communicate with me from time to time, just say, "Hey, how you going, Shorty?" Liam Kennedy spoke to me today and said, "Hey, mate, how you going?" Right.
Yeah.
So I'll have some great mates that Jason Robinson, perfect example of a guy I've known for a long time, and we'll always talk, and I would never change a single thing. I'd love to do Origin and Grand Final. That's probably my only regret, but you can't control that. They're not things you can control.
That's
they're
right.
Just are decisions made by other people, which you can only put your best foot forward to try and achieve.
Now, the one thing I do remember about Jason Robinson is, did he suffer a hamstring injury during a game and had to be replaced as a referee, or was he the one that replaced?
Yes,
he was the one that replaced Stephen Clark. Was it?
Correct. It was.
Right.
Yes. At the showground, that was Jason's first game. I think Clarkey had a plantar fasciitis thing. I think, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Had to limp off, and Jason. I was there that night because I think I refereed a flag game, and Jason was the reserve grade referee, and he did go on there. It was pretty cool to be there to watch someone's debut after working as hard as he did. So yeah, you're right. That was I remember that night. Yes,
I just mixed it up a little bit with the people there, but we'll wrap things up with the set of 6, and hopefully it's a set of 6 and not a 7 tackle set. Now, this question will probably be answered maybe because of the role that you're in now. But is there a favourite sport outside of rugby league?
Football. Yes and no. To be honest, not really. But in saying that, what I have done is I probably watch all sports. I'm just one of those guys who loves sport, right? So I would watch Sydney FC, I immersed myself in cricket. I'll watch the Sydney Kings from time to time. That's that type of stuff. So to be honest, no, I don't have one because I probably watch a
Yeah.
fair bit of stuff as I go. So the answer is no. I don't have it. No, I don't have one outside of that. No.
Nah, that's fair enough. Fair enough. What about how do you go when you do watch rugby league games, like on TV or at the ground? Do you critique the referee's performance at all, or disagree at all with some of the decisions sometimes?
I reckon it's different now. Like I think having had to watch hundreds of games in my coaching and management uh, positions I've had previously, like that's been different. Like I've now probably can sit back and just watch the game, but ideally I will still have that feel for I have to watch. I'll still watch the referees and I'll still make sure that I'll text one from time to time. I've done it over the last couple of weeks. I thought that was really good type stuff. I'll always do that because you do it, and I've probably done it now with the football side of things because that's just part of what you do. You want people to be great at what they do.
That's it for sure. What would be the one unique thing people don't know about Alan Shortall?
Yeah, good question.
Is there
I don't know
a
if
is
there's
there
anything
is there
unique.
is there a hidden talent or something or?
No, probably. Look, probably I'm I'm a bit passionate about my politics. It's probably one thing that people wouldn't know. I've followed the US elections a lot. I've really find it interesting. I don't know why. I like
Okay.
probably because of the par the big swings between what
Yeah.
people think and that type of stuff. But as the Australian election will come along, so probably yeah, I do like to talk about politics a bit. So that's probably something that no one would know.
Probably pretty smart by PM Anthony Albanese to put the federal election on May 3, the Magic Round weekend.
Maybe they'll have a booth there, right? That you could put a booth in the stadium
Well,
or
that
something.
would be a smart idea, have one there, because I guarantee you there'll be a lot of absentee votes, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
People out of
yeah.
town that
Yeah.
I'll have to actually do my voting pre-voting because I'll be up at Magic Round, so I'll be doing
Oh,
mine.
excellent. Good
I'll
man.
have a legitimate reason for voting early this time.
Yeah.
Not that I don't any other time, but um, which three former teammates, now we'll say referees, that you worked with, do you think you wouldn't want to be on a deserted island with?
Did you say wouldn't?
Yeah, wouldn't. And why?
Jason Robinson, because I will say that because he can be a pest.
Okay, yeah.
So no, um, but probably because we are so I've known him for so long. So yeah, him. Um, I don't know if there's anybody else. There's like two other positions I'm thinking about who else would I not want to be on a deserted
All
island
right.
with?
Well, what about what about players that you've refereed? Who do you think you wouldn't want to be on instead of referees?
Oh, now you're asking challenging questions. You're asking me to highlight who those players are. Like, nah, there wouldn't be players who. What I would find there'd be players who want to talk your ear off and they want to talk to you about the decision that you made. That's that sort of stuff. So
Okay.
any player who'd have a gripe with me, probably I don't want to.
Yeah.
Probably
Nah. Fair enough.
spend an island with.
Fair enough. Well, okay. So a bit of a two-part question. You're hosting a dinner party.
Yeah.
What is your specialty meal that you're going to cook for three invited guests? We'll start with that one. What's your specialty meal?
Chicken risotto. They're the ones that's me. I love a risotto. So yeah, that's the specialty meal for me.
Nice. Now, just a quick side one to that. Do referees have like a pre-game meal that they have every week before a game, like players would?
Yeah, some do. Some have a specific meal that they did. I tried not to because I found that sometimes the next day, or particularly the other way around, if you've got a game in the day, you're like far. I can't eat heavily, so
Yeah.
but I didn't mind a pasta dish, a bolognese or something like that
Okay.
before a game. Try to avoid the burgers and stuff like that. But sometimes when you're traveling, it's very difficult to try and avoid those. So
Have those after the game.
yeah, that's it.
And the second part of the question was if three people you would invite to the dinner party that you have never met, either alive or dead, who would you invite?
More politics. Donald Trump. Like I just find him an interesting person. I probably don't agree with everything that he says or he does, but I would love to have that conversation with him about why he's got his beliefs and that sort of stuff. Um, Probably a guy like some players like a Brett Kenny
Okay.
and that type of stuff when I first like it, that bringing those sort of guys. Probably the other one is the one, and I talk about Ivan Cleary a bit when I teach a bit of leadership, and just the way he has brought a team together with a whole heap of different people, and around how that's successful. And probably Craig Bellamy goes into that scenario as well too. How have you brought all these people and been so successful for long periods of time? So from a more sporty type scenario. So they're probably some people I'd love to have at my dinner party just to talk about how successful they've been.
Well, here's another little extra question, and I probably ask this to people who bring up his name, and you mentioned Brett Kenny there. And do you think he should be an immortal of rugby league, Brett Kenny?
He should be a candidate. Yeah, I don't, not sure I don't know what the criteria is. I need to go and have a look at that. But I think that I've always believed that, you've got Wally Lewis, who was the preeminent player of that particular era, the king, that sort of stuff. And like many players, there's always that player who misses out because there is that just someone who is just as successful as he was. And I think Brett Kenny sort of fell in that scenario. So, potentially he should be a candidate for consideration for me. Like I thought he was one of the, him and Sterling were very good at what they did. And, that was where I was brought up, was seeing those guys be so successful as well too.
Yeah, well, I think he should be, but we'll just have to wait and see if that happens one day. It didn't happen last year, unfortunately. Ronnie Coote, and kudos to Ron getting the nod there. And the last one, favourite musician or band to listen to?
Now you're going to open up a playlist that way. My first album was Daryl Braithwaite.
Oh, yes.
Summer. And like most people, the horses, like Daryl Braithwaite was my first, and I still listen to him now. So yeah, he's my go-to.
Yeah, no, they play that over the airways at the stadiums from time to time as well during games. Like players, do referees have like did you ever listen to music before a game to pump up, or you need to concentrate on the game at hand?
Not so much pump up, but it's like that. Yes, that is
get in the zone.
Staple of referees' rooms. I'll let that little secret out. Yes, that they do have playlists, and they play it. Yeah, and particular people have some particular what they like. They're very particular. So and some interesting playlists as well too. But I won't divulge those. I'll let them answer those questions.
Yeah,
for you.
fair enough. Well, I've only ever had two referees on the podcast before, Gavin Badger and Bill Harrigan. So yeah, they didn't tell me about about the playlist, but no, that's okay, not a problem. Well, Alan Shortall, thank you very much for coming on the Paracave podcast today. We probably could have spoken for longer, and most welcome any other time to talk longer as well. A referee that I saw during his referee during his career in the NRL. So thank you very much for joining me today on the Paracave podcast.
Thanks, Troy. Much appreciated. Enjoyed it immensely, and we'll talk again, I'm sure, soon.
Alan, how you going, mate? Are you a Paracave podcast listener?
I am, bro. It's a great podcast. Everyone tune in.
Go Para. And welcome back to the podcast. Just wanted to say a quick thanks to Alan Shortall for coming on to the podcast and having a chat. Look, I really enjoyed it. I hope you did as well. Certainly some very interesting little insights into being a referee and Alan's time in the NRL, and also at the start of part number 1, talking about his new role at Football Australia. So we wish him all the best there at Football Australia. And look, we may get him back on the podcast later on. He did mention a part 2 there. Who knows? We may not. We'll have to look at that Hindy 300th game again. But look, I really appreciate, Alan, for your time and your chat. I really enjoyed it, and hope to catch up one day and say good day. Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. If you really enjoyed it, then please share it with your family and friends. I'd really appreciate it. Please give a 5-star rating and review as well. That would be most welcome. And any feedback, if you'd like to give me some feedback, just drop me a message on any of the social media channels. Happy to listen to some feedback and talk rugby league, I guess, as well. So thank you very much for all the support from everybody. I really, really appreciate it. I love doing this podcasting gig. It is great fun and really enjoy it. So thank you very much. Look, onwards and upwards to next week as well. Once again, plenty of content coming your way. So stay tuned to the Instagram page, Facebook page, and you will see what is coming. Tipping podcast, game review podcast, NRL round review podcast, interview podcast, hopefully, as well. So plenty of content coming your way. But thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And the Para Cave podcast, by the fan, for the fans. Go Para!
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Para Cave Podcast. See you next time.